let's get things started. Hey guys, Hattopy here. There have been many characters over the entirety of the Pokemon series, none more so hyped up for the most part than the gym leaders. These men and women pose the toughest challenge that you'll face throughout the majority of the game. Now, to pick my favorite ones out of them all is a bit of a tall order. Besides Generation 8 and about technically half of Generation 2, there's 8 gyms over the course of 7 different Pokemon games to pick from. So in order to pick which ones I like the most, here's how I'm going to do things, and hopefully you guys will join along as well. I'm going to list my favorite gym leaders within each respective spot that you would find them in your trainer card. So, my favorite first gym leader, my favorite second one, etc, etc. Now I'm going to be judging them based upon their design, the layout of the gym and or their puzzle, the actual challenge of the gym fight itself and how it coincides with that specific point of the game, and the personalities that they exhibit within their gym. Now, if I was to be judging them based on outside of the gym, then Generation 5 would be kind of at an advantage, so this is to kind of keep things a little more fair. Now, outside of all that though, while I will discuss a little bit more about the winners or the characters that are at least much more higher up on my list, I'm only really going to gloss over real quick about the characters that really just don't matter to me as much, mostly just to keep this video length from being extremely long. But regardless, let's dive right into this thing and take a look at my favorite first gym leader that you would fight. Brock of Pewter City, Faulkner of Violet City, Roxanne of Rustboro City, Rourke of Orberg City, the Waiter Bros of Striton City, Sharon of Aspertia City, Viola of Santaloon City. And of course, we start off with the one that's probably the hardest to judge, due solely onto the fact that there's really not a whole lot to go on for most of these guys. So, regardless, let's just take a look at them. So, despite the nostalgia surrounding them, Brock, Roxanne, and Rourke all really don't do a whole lot for me since they're rock type specialists. I never really liked rock types as the first gym that you fight, since for the most part there's not really a whole lot to remedy that situation. Rourke not as much, but regardless. And while I really like what they did with the Waiter Bros, their fights really all boil down to the same thing, since you have to basically go get the monkey that is strongest against them before you actually go fight their gym. So their fight pretty much wraps up in the same way regardless. Now with Sharon, I like the context of Sharon's fight, since he's a recently arrival in the previous game beforehand, and now he's a gym leader here, and it kind of makes for a really fun nostalgic fight. But you take the context away, and his gym is actually kind of boring as his fight and his design. And finally with Faulkner, while he does have my favorite design out of all of the first wave of gym leaders, his gym just has a lot to be desired. It's not very interesting. They tried to fix that in the remake, tried to spruce it up a little bit, but it wasn't all quite there. Rather, my winner here, and probably the only award that Generation 6 would get from me, is for Viola. Her design is sweet and snappy, no pun intended, and with the layout of her gym, it actually looks quite impressive, with even a small semblance of a puzzle involved here, with it being a maze, of course. And with the actual fight itself, it's actually probably the only fight in Generation 6 that's actually challenging, since it comes before you get the experience share. And with the Pokemon that she uses a Surskit and a Vivillon. The Surskit there primarily to interrupt any plans that you have with your Fennekin. So with a nice little design, a nice gym, and an actual challenge to the fight without being too overbearing, that is why Viola is my favorite first gym leader. Misty of Cerulean City, Bugsy of Azalea Town, Brawly of Dewford Town, Gardenia of Eterna City, Lenora of Nakreen City, Roxy of Verbank City, Grant of Silage City. Traversing Grant's gym is slow and boring. If we're talking about the original games, Misty, Bugsy, and Brawly also have some very just plain gyms. And with Gardenia and Lenora, they have a bit more intrigue with their gyms. There's actually a little bit more of a challenge, but it's still not quite that interesting. Instead, Roxy takes the win here for just being dang hilarious. She doesn't really have a puzzle with her gym. Her gimmick is that she can't really hear you at all because she's blaring all that music, so you have to go around defeating all of her other bandmates first before you can actually go and talk to her. With her design, it looks pretty nice as well. Certainly suits the kind of character that she is. With the song that she plays, kind of makes me think she's the one that sang that music for the Inklings in Splatoon. But anyways, with the actual fight itself, she has a Whirlipede and a Coughing, so you definitely need to come prepared with antidotes, more so especially with her Whirlipede since it knows Venoshock, and especially at this early point in any of the other Pokemon games, Venoshock can be deadly to anyone that is poisoned. So, because of her design, just how goofy her entire gym is, and the actual fact that there's actual challenge to her gym, makes it so that Roxy is my favorite second gym leader. Lieutenant Surge of Vermilion City, Whitney of Goldenrod City, Watson of Mauville City, Maylene of Veilstone City, Berg of Castelia City, Karina of Shalor City. Trying to move with the roller skates in Karina's gym sucks. With Whitney and both versions of Berg, their gyms are fairly simple in design, with particular shout out to Whitney for basically being a beginner's trap. Although once you know what she's all about and come prepared, then really she's not all that bad. With Watson, he has a nice looking gym for the most part. The puzzle isn't very difficult though, and his fight's very meh. His design just looks super derpy as well. And when it comes to Maylene, I like her design, I like the layout of her gym, she has a good fight going about her. The only problem with her though is that she comes at a weird intermission point where from the length of time that it takes to get from Gardenia to Maylene, your team is fairly overpowered and it kind of makes for a little bit of an easier fight. So that's why she didn't win here. Nope, it's our boy Lieutenant Surge that takes the win here. Now, if there was any gym leader from Generation 1 that would be most remembered by pretty much everyone, it would probably be Lieutenant Surge right after Brock and Misty, since, you know, they were part of the anime. With Surge, he just has that big design that just almost seems slightly out of place, but I'll get into that in a second. Now, a big negative about him is the fact that you need Cut or Surf, technically, to get into its gym. But that's just about as bad as it gets for me. Yes, even the most infamous puzzles ever conceived in a Pokemon game, the garbage can puzzles, okay, really, they're not that bad. I know they're heavily glitched up in Generation 1, but I never really had that hard of a time figuring out which ones to go with and continuing on. Now, like I said, his design is kind of neat with an interesting backstory behind it, considering that he talks about the war that he was in. Makes you wonder though how long ago the war was, because he doesn't look very old and there's really no lore-based proof that kind of proves that there was a war very recently or anything like that. I don't know. He's certainly not AZ old in that respect, but regardless, that's for another time. With his actual fight, like Roxy, you have to come prepared, since his Pikachu knows Thunder Wave, so you need to come with lots of Paralyze heals. He also has a very bulky Raichu, but for Generation 1, the fight's not overly hard. You'll get through it for the most part. But it's because of that weirdly interesting backstory. That is why Lieutenant Surge is my favorite number 3 gym leader. Erica of Celadon City, Morty of Equitique City, Flannery of Lava Ridge Town, Crasher Wake of Pastoria City, Elesa of Nimbasa City, Ramos of Cormarine City. This one was a tough one to kind of pick my winner for here, but at the very least, here are the scraps. Now, traversing Ramos's gym is fine, but his design and his fight are both super boring. Erica needs Cut to get into and also get through her gym, which is super dumb, and unlike Surge, she's very dull, very boring. Far and away so compared to Surge. Now, when it comes to Crasher Wake, he has a neat little puzzle around him, but his design and the fight itself just aren't all that interesting. Morty, kind of in the same respect, although it's kind of reverse in that logic, in that his fight is kind of interesting, but the puzzle in his gym gets to be kind of boring once you understand kind of the idea surrounding it. That leaves only Elesa and Flannery left, and for me, at the very least, it'd have to go to Elesa, but here's why. Flannery's puzzle is neat. I like it. The hot spring, traversing, all that stuff is kind of fun. Her design is awesome. I really dig it. And her backstory is kind of interesting as well. She doesn't really go into it a whole lot, but the small glimpses that she talks about makes it kind of neat. The problem with her, though, is that she has a very inconsistent difficulty level when it comes to fighting her. If you have a female water-type Pokemon, she is a breeze to get through. Anything else, it's extremely difficult since her Torkoal knows Attract and making for a very difficult fight that you can't really do much about. Rather, like I said, the winner here is going to go to Elesa, more specifically her Black and White 2 iteration of it, since you kind of get to go through both gyms in one of them anyways. So at the beginning of it, you get to go through all the roller coaster nonsense again, like from the first game, only to be told at the very end that, sorry, your princess is in another castle. So then you get to go to the actual gym, and there you get to encounter a long catwalk with a whole bunch of people cheering you on as you get to walk down and strut your stuff, battling trainers all along the way. When you actually reach the grand stage at the very end and meet Elesa, her design is very flashy, very eccentric. It's probably one of the more bolder character models that they've used in the entire series. Now, like Surge, you have to come prepared since you have to deal with all of her electric types. But the biggest problem comes with her Emolga, since it's electric flying, completely negating the one type that electric types are weak to, ground types. It makes for a very challenging fight, something you have to kind of do like a 4D kind of mind thought as you go into her fight. So with how intriguing her fight is and just how interesting her design and stage is, that is why Elesa is my favorite 4th gym leader. Koga of Fuchsia City, Chuck of Cyanwood City, Norman of Petalburg City, Fantina of Hearthhome City, Clay of Driftvale City, Clement of Lumiose City. Chuck's gym is stupid boring to get through and requires strength to get through as well, which also blows. It also sets up a really unfair fight right at the beginning of it, so that sucks as well. When it comes to both iterations of Clay, his puzzles are neat in the grand scale of things. However, I find that with the first iteration, it's too much like Byron's, and in both regards, his design is boring. I don't really like his design all that much. With Clement, I kind of like his design, however, and his puzzle is neat. But the problem is that the questions for the puzzles are not very good. They're very simple, and if you have any issues getting through it, I have no answers for you at all. When it comes to Fantina as well, she has more complex puzzles to get through for sure. However, I really don't like her design, and her fight's very meh. And although ninjas are never not cool, Koga's gym is very boring in his fight as well. Nope, this time Papa Norman gets the win on this one. Not counting the fact that he's the only dad in the entire Pokemon series, his gym is actually quite interesting. You actually get to control the level of challenge that you want to go through throughout the entire gym, since each specific trainer has a different stat that they specialize in. So you get to go about it whichever way that you want, and makes it for a fairly interesting trip throughout the gym. With his actual fight itself, he has like almost 2 different phases to his fight. It's kind of interesting. He starts off with a Vigoroth, which are very fast, very strong Pokemon that can dish out high ends of DPS real fast. And then he also throws out a Slacking there to yawn you and then just chip away at your health as the fight goes on. He then also sends out another Slacking later on that is a kind of a mix of the two, since it has Focus Punch instead. And you know what? he just has such a dadly design. Like it just looks so much like something I would picture my own father wearing. So for that, being his fight being very interesting, and just for being best dad, that is why Norman is my favorite 5th gym leader. Sabrina of Saffron City, Jasmine of Olivine City, Winona of Four Tree City, Byron of Canalave City, Skyla of Mistralton City, Valerie of Lavere City. Duh! Look at those eyes! Ugh, next! In context, Jasmine's gym is quite nice. It acknowledges the amount of effort that you put in to help out her Pokemon. Putting the context aside, the gym is non-existent. There's no puzzle to it, there's no trainers to it, they just let you go and fight her. It's kind of funny in one regard, but there's no challenge to it, and it's kind of boring in that sense, and her fight itself isn't very good. Now with Sabrina's gym, it is a huge trial and error just to get through the entire thing for any beginners, and even now I have a hard time trying to figure out which part of it is the right one to go to in order to get to her. So I end up just having to go through a large trial and error session just to eventually get to her. With Byron, I actually kind of like Byron's setup for his gym. It's got like a lot of different levels to the puzzle, and it's going all through it. It's fairly straightforward for the most part, but whatever. His design though doesn't really do a whole lot for me. And although I really like Winona's design, her gym is a huge bore. However, with her counterpart, that's where things get interesting. The winner this time around is Black and White 1's version of Skyla. Now, just getting shot around all the time with cans and splatting all over walls is just dang hilarious. She has a really nice, sleek design as well, with a very decent personality as well. I kind of enjoy it. With her fight, flying types aren't really a great type to have for the most part, but she complements them well with a nice variety of different types to complement them, making for an interesting fight. Now, the League was probably having enough of her giving trainers concussions every time they went to her gym, which is why they changed it in the second one. Second one still also being kind of dangerous, but I very much preferred the first iteration of her instead. So, which is how fun her gym is. That is why Skyla is my favorite 6th gym leader. Blaine of Cinnabar Island, Price of Mahogany Town, Tate and Liza of Moss Deep City, Candace of Snowpoint City, Bryson of Icarus City, Drayden of Opelucid City, Olympia of Anastar City. Even to this day, Candace's puzzle gives me a headache, with Price and Bryson having a sort of same setup as well, with a more boring and more intriguing version respectively. Olympia actually has a really unique style of traversing through her gym, but her design and her fight leave a lot to be desired at the very end. Now with Blaine, he has an alright fight and probably the sassiest burn out of any Pokemon character in the series, but his design and his puzzle, or at least the questions for the puzzle, leave a lot to be desired. Now all that's left is Drayden and Tate and Liza. Now, with Drayden, I really like his gym. It's basically a copy of Norman's, but a little bit more difficult, of course. His fight itself is also quite challenging, and he has a really cool design. And fun fact, Drayden is probably the only video game character that has a name very close to my own spelling of my own name. So it means a lot to me, kind of. I know it shouldn't mean a whole lot to a lot of people out there, and rightfully so. But you can only go through so many Christmases without a proper ornament like all the other kids have that already have their names printed on. They're like, hey, check out my ornament, and mine's just there written in marker. Ooh. Yeah, I'm just petty like that. But I think the gimmick of Tate and Liza's gym is what will win out here. Now, for the actual puzzle in the gym itself, it's a spinning tile puzzle, so it's not anything too crazy that we've never seen before, but they're still pretty fun to do, pretty enjoyable. But what's really interesting comes with the actual fight itself. It's the only gym leader that actually has a double battle formation, making for a fairly interesting experience. Now, for the Pokemon they send out, they only send out a Lunatone and a Solrock. Now, that might not sound like much, but they actually have stuff that complements each other and helps them prepare for battle. Their Solrock has Sunny Day and Solar Beam, and also has Flamethrower as well to up the damage, while Lunatone has like Light Screen, Reflect, has all this stuff to help kind of cover for the other. It makes it for a very, very challenging fight, not overly difficult, but they certainly do make it a little bit more so when it comes to Emerald. Now, I never played Emerald, so I can't talk about it too much, but while doing this video, I kind of found that they did have a little bit more challenge to it, which makes the fight all the more better. Now, for that reason alone, and also just for just being unique. That is why Tate and Eliza is my favorite 7th gym leader. Giovanni of Viridian City, Claire of Blackthorn City, Wallace of Sutopolis City, Vulkner of Sunnyshore City, Drayden or Iris of Opelucid City, Marlin of Humalau City, Wulfric of Snowbell City. I like Claire's design, and her battle can be pretty intense, but her gym can go burn in the lava pit that she built it above because she needs strength to get through it, and it sucks. I know you don't need it for the remakes, but I mostly am focusing on the originals here. Now, when it comes to Wallace, his gym is also just extremely bland, and as his fight as well. He's also got a really meh design, as can't stand it. I can't say much more for Juan either, since I haven't played Emerald still. But regardless, Giovanni outside of context, everything about his gym is just super boring, and his fight is extremely easy. Now, when it comes down to Marlin has a funny conclusion to his fight, and his traversing his gym is kind of alright, but his fight is whatever, and I'm not a huge fan of his design. Vulkner and Wulfric, they both have some really nice designs. Their fights are generally challenging and have some unique puzzles, but it's weighed down by just how cumbersome it is to actually get through the entire gym as well as to get out. Less so with Wulfric, but regardless. No, instead of getting snubbed from the last gym leader spot, Drayden and Iris will win it for this one. More specifically, for Drayden. Now, the thing about Drayden's design that I really like, and it reminds me a lot of Mike Hager from the Final Fight series. He's got this like super dapper looking, sophisticated design with the body type of a pro wrestler. It looks completely out of place, and it's hilarious, and I love it. It's so goofy. And just look at that facial hair. That's the stuff of legends right there. And Iris is an interesting contrast to it. She has a very cute, ditzy design to her, but they both share Pokemon in that regard, so I wouldn't mind having either one of them protecting the gym. Now, with the Pokemon that they use, though, it makes for quite a challenging fight. It's a great way to end off that specific game. It's not as challenging as I would say something like the first iteration of Claire from the original Gold and Silver, but at least Drayden and Iris' gym is a lot more manageable to get through without pulling my hair out. It's not quite as interesting as their Black and White 2 version of it, but it's still fun enough to get through. It's got a nice wide assortment of spectacle to it, having to climb all the way up to the very top. And everything that I've also said before kind of comes into play here with the whole naming and all that stuff before, for Drayden at least. So that is why Drayden, at the very least, maybe Iris as well, is my favorite 8th gym leader. So there you have it, my list of my favorite gym leaders within each spot. Kind of looking at it kind of makes for a nice little all-star versions of my own Pokemon League if I were to ever make one. Maybe replace Elesa with Flannery just to make sure that everyone's type is different. But regardless, let me know what you guys think of my list, and let me know what yours would look like as well, or also how fun my list was, or just how completely wrong my list could be. Regardless of what it might be, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to discuss whatever with you guys. But anywho, thank you all so much for watching. If you like what you saw, you can click right up here to check out some of my other videos that I've done. Or, if you really feel like it, you can click right up here to subscribe. But until next time, guys, I will see you all later.